The first thing to say about this movie is that it actually exists. It really actually exists. Wow. Hello and welcome to another movie review. As always, I'm Kelly, and I just got done streaming Zack Snyder's Justice League. And if you're just looking for the overall, yes, this is better than the previous version. With that said, we should probably talk about that previous version first. Because, honestly, I feel that it gets a lot more hate than it deserves. Now, if you're going to try to find my previous review on Justice League, you're not going to find it. Unfortunately, the movie came out during a time when I didn't have a computer to edit videos, so most of my arguments were made verbally and other things like live streams. However, the biggest thing I will always say is that this Justice League is both the most surprising and most disappointing film of 2017. Surprising in that it is better than it had any right to be. Disappointing because it still wasn't good enough to shut up everyone who wanted to bash this movie. And don't let it be mistaken, people wanted to bash this movie long before it came out. This is one of the most over-reported, overwatched film productions I think I've ever seen in my 30 years of life. No joke, people were following around the actors looking for some kind of shit just to give this movie before it even had a chance to come out because, well, it's the Justice League. Be honest with yourself. Would you even have known about the CGI mustache if it hadn't been reported upon 6 months in advance? Be honest with yourself. No, you wouldn't have. It would have looked like a weird color grading and that's it. I barely even see it. I don't even get why people freak out about it. It's one bad effect. Seriously, get over it. Again, with that said though, the actual quality of the movie, you can tell that it was an editing nightmare job and that Joss Whedon was really trying to make something workable there. Though, now that we have the other version of it, we can say that Joss Whedon corrected a lot more of it than he let on. But even then, I don't really blame him for that because he was told by Warner Brothers execs to make the movie exactly 2 hours. This movie is exactly 2 hours and 1 minute, so that they could optimize theater release schedule times. And considering Zack Snyder had already gone on point saying that he wanted a 3.5 hour epic on his hands, yeah, shaving that down to 2 hours, it's a miracle that this movie is actually coherent. And it is. It's actually very coherent. In fact, I can honestly say I've watched this more than I have some Marvel movies. Which I will admit the Marvel movies are better, but, well, it's the Justice League and I found it enjoyable. But how does it stack up to the actual full 4-hour cut of the Snyder Cut that we got? Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be watching this very many times ever again. And that's not to say that this movie is bad or that the other one's amazing. It's just that if I'm going to watch the Justice League, I'll just watch the full version of it because this is what the original director and writer intended the movie to be. I say mostly because non-spoilers, you can tell while watching this film that certain things were tweaked for the sake of being tweaked, as well as, obviously, I've heard the feedback from other people, so I probably shouldn't do that thing that was obviously my choice that made it into this movie. Just to sweep that one under the rug and pretend like it was all Joss Whedon's fault. But even then, you can still tell that this is the original vision that he wanted for this film, even with those tweaks. And overall, it is an enjoyable sit. And I think it's better that it actually came out on a streaming service rather than in theaters, mostly because the length of 4 hours is much better when you can do it in bursts. And the movie's set up so you can stop it at like the end of part 1, the end of part 3, and come back later. It's meant more as something along the lines of The Irishman than it is an actual regular theatrical release movie. Though it is still shot in IMAX, so they actually put it in 4:3, which can be a little annoying for some people, especially when you're so used to streaming things where it's taking up the fullness of your television set. Personally, it didn't bug me all that much. It was just one of those things like, oh, okay, this is going to be a little bit different. Although I should answer the question before I actually start talking about spoilers. Is this going to be the movie that changes your mind on the DCEU as Zack Snyder had done it, back before he left the project? The answer is no. Because this movie is just essentially what he wanted to do. And if you weren't on board with it, with Batman v Superman or Man of Steel or the first Wonder Woman, this isn't going to change your mind and you might as well skip it. But if you were on board with it, or at least willing to see where it went, this is going to be for you. And unfortunately, we can't really talk about anything else in this movie without going into spoilers. So if you wanted no spoilers at all, you can skip to hear my final rating, though you probably are going to know what it is considering the format it's already, on. But from here on out, I will spoil anything and everything at any moment, and trust me, there's a lot to talk about, especially near the ending. So, spoilers be warned. As always with one of my reviews, I will start with talking about the good. And the number one best thing, bar none, in this movie is how much they flesh out Cyborg. Like, no joke, his entire storyline, his entire motivation, everything is cut from the Whedon cut of this movie. And I understand why, because it's really not too important to the storyline overall. As we saw, you can cut it out and still have a coherent movie. However, cutting it out is just almost criminal, and I really want to get mad at Joss Whedon for doing it. Cyborg's relationship with his father, his mother, his whole life after coming back to life after being turned into a cyborg. Like, it is genuinely heartbreaking, but also kind of uplifting, especially by the end of the movie. And sure, it's not positive. I won't go that far, but I will say that he got to a place where there's a light at the end of his tunnel. And leaving that light at the end of his tunnel, especially if they are going to end up spinning him off into a solo movie like their original plan was to, that would not have been a bad place to start. But honestly, it's not just Cyborg who gets this kind of helped flesh out treatment. I can tell a lot more about Barry Allen inside this. In fact, I'd honestly say that Barry acts a lot more like Barry in this version than the Whedon cut, where he was acting a lot more like Wally West. And you get a real sense that he's really just trying to punch through all the grief he's had to find a positive place in his life. Also, as they did with the Cyborg stuff, I can say if they were trying to spin off Flash into his own movie from here, they left him in a good place and established at least Iris inside of the movie, even if it's not, I don't think she's actually named in the movie. Although I can't say the same thing about Aquaman or Wonder Woman inside this, which I'll talk about in the next section, but just know that it's a thing. Moving on from the characters and storylines for a second, one of the other things that's greatly improved upon here, and I will say is probably the second best thing about this, is honestly just consistency through the color grading and effects. Joss Whedon, you could tell he was trying to mimic Snyder's style, but he was also still trying to keep it, I guess you could say, colorful. Though here in this version, you can definitely tell everything is a lot more consistent. It's all dark and washed out per the Zack Snyder style, but you can definitely tell that there's a lot more detail than he'd normally do. You can tell that Zack Snyder put a lot of effort this time to kind of correct the criticism from Batman v Superman, where everything was just too dark, you couldn't see stuff, where it's still dark, but you can see it. And having that consistency across all of the 4 hours of this movie is very much a plus, and really does make you feel like they had a general idea and direction they were going with this. But screw all that technical stuff. Let's talk about the fan servicey moments, and there's a lot of them inside of here. Yeah, not only do we get some stuff with like future Joker and Batman having one-on-one back and forth talks with each other, but you also get other things, like mentions of what the anti-life equation are, and an explanation about how the boxes are not the anti-life equation, which was kind of implied inside of that version. Martian Manhunter is here, and doing stuff behind the scenes, and even has an end credit scene where he goes to Batman to explain, yeah, I can't stay in the shadows anymore, and I would like to join the team. You get a lot more character references and meeting people from Aquaman storylines. You get a bunch of other references to other events across the entire DC universe. It truly feels like this was meant to be a live-action crossover event, where they're actually talking about comic book stuff that they'll explore in later movies. Does that make this a giant commercial for what's coming next? A little bit, but not so much that it distracts from what's happening. The characters are only mentioning these things because they're relevant to what they're talking about. It feels like it's put in there because, yes, these people would know about what this thing is. Not so much, hey, we're putting it in there because the fans will know what this thing is. And you really feel like Zack Snyder was really trying to give us, the fans, what we wanted to see on screen. Unfortunately, he might have gone a little bit too far in places, and yeah, we should probably talk about the negatives and the things that this movie does poorly, because it's still not a perfect movie, even if Zack Snyder got what he wanted. And I'm saying he was good to get what he wanted. Fuck the Warner Brothers executives who forced that out the door so they could get a fucking paycheck. Yeah, despite the fact that this was one of the most overreported movies of all time, people seem to forget that one, that the only reason that came out in November and didn't get delayed like it was originally tagged to was so that a couple execs could get a bonus check for getting it out in November. And I'm really glad that Zack Snyder was able to actually get control back and even being given money to finish this project and do it properly. But that does not make this a perfect movie. And one of the big flaws from this movie is that at times it does feel a little too fan servicey. I mentioned how it could feel like a commercial for things to come. The problem is that we don't know if any of those things will come, because we're not even sure if this movie's in continuity with the other ones. It certainly isn't with Aquaman. Yeah, I mentioned the Aquaman stuff earlier. You meet Vordo, played by Willem Dafoe in this movie, and he is not the same Vordo that you met in Aquaman. First off, Zack Snyder put Vordo inside of a big old clunky iron suit thing that just looks all kinds of stupid. Two, in this, you see Vordo give Aquaman his suit and his mother's trident, but in Aquaman we saw that she left that trident with him at the beginning of the movie. But honestly, from an aesthetic point of view, the Atlanteans we saw inside of Zack Snyder's Justice League are not the Atlanteans we saw in Aquaman at all. But honestly, it's not just with Aquaman. In this movie, we got Darkseid, actual full-on Darkseid, but it doesn't match up with what we know from all the previous movies or the future ones after this. Which, let's be honest, Zack Snyder could have adjusted this movie to match if this was meant to be in canon. Like, the big one I noticed here was that in the flashback sequence with Wonder Woman explaining the whole Age of Heroes thing, now we see that Darkseid is the one that landed on Earth. However, in the Whedon version, it was still Steppenwolf. And in that version, it's Steppenwolf that loses. So he gets banished, and now that's why he's going on his conquest for Darkseid. In this version, we do flesh out Steppenwolf and explain his backstory, but now it's Darkseid that gets pushed back, even though he did find the anti-life equation on Earth, yet he seemed to just forget where Earth was, despite the fact he landed on it. And they make it like some big reveal that the mother boxes show Steppenwolf a vision when he goes to Desaad to talk to Darkseid and tell him, I know that this is the planet that has the anti-life equation, get here now. I'm just sitting there thinking, but wait, in the flashback we saw Darkseid already know Earth has the anti-life equation. So what the hell happened in the 50,000 years or whatever it says? But you can tell that that's one of the many scenes that was changed because it needed to be different from the Whedon cut. Yeah, they wanted to show more Darkseid off, so they changed that beginning section, who was obviously supposed to still be Steppenwolf in the original cut of this movie, to Darkseid for fan service. But they didn't adjust the story to make this make sense. So, in the flashbacks, suddenly Darkseid is still wielding something that may or may not be some kind of superpowered axe, like Steppenwolf. Instead of, using his Omega Beams, which he totally has, they show him using them in a flash-forward sequence at the end, so I know that they can do it. Just they didn't do it here for some reason. But overall, what does that even matter when we don't even know if anything in this storyline is going to be followed up on, because DC is still already planning on rebooting their entire cinematic universe with the Flashpoint movie anyway. I mean, good God, we don't even think that Henry Cavill or Ben Affleck are coming back as Superman and Batman respectively. Hell, I'm 90% sure that Ben Affleck's not coming back, and Henry Cavill has said that he wants to do it, but he's still in negotiations, which usually means that Warner Brothers is trying to lowball him and making him sign a contract for like 10 movies. And thus you start hearing rumors, like I have been, that they're going to reboot Superman. And we've got the new Batman coming out, so why not just try to incorporate him if his movie does well? The point here is that this movie feels like, although it's setting stuff up, it doesn't matter. We're never going to see the anti-life equation. We're not going to see this dark side show up. He's literally just here to please us fans so that we can move on and do something different. And that's bad because there's so much fan service in here and people talking about things that are going to be explored if they're not going to be explored. I want follow-ups. I want this story to continue, and I want them to actually put writers in charge to keep continuity across these films so that we can actually have a shared universe. However, I don't think that's going to happen. Even if this does extremely well and HBO Max becomes just a big powerhouse of a streaming service out of this, I still don't think they'll do it. I think that Warner Bros. Will take the safe bet, and they're just going to reboot everything and start from scratch because it's easier than trying to fix the mistakes that came before. And that's not the only negatives that this movie unfortunately commits. I mentioned Steppenwolf earlier, and while he does have a backstory, he has less personality than he did in the other one. I don't know how you did that, but you did it. Actually, I take that back. I know how you did it. You did it by changing a lot of his dialogue from the Whedon cut because it was in the Whedon cut. I will admit the effects on him look a lot better. You can see a lot of intricacies in his armor. For example, he's being shot at with arrows. Suddenly his armor opens up and catches the arrowheads before they can pierce his skin. Oh, they're attacking with blades now? Those blades clamp down and act as like chainmail so that he can't get sliced. It's cool, intricate details, and the effects look amazing on it. However, remember how boastful and, proud warrior he was inside of the Whedon version? Yeah, not that anymore. Now he's more like angsty teenager who just really wants daddy's approval. And some of his best lines are just gone. Like, one of my favorite lines from Steppenwolf is when he and Wonder Woman are fighting inside of the Gotham area to save the people he's interrogating. He tells the parademon, "Stay back, she's mine." In the Whedon cut, Wonder Woman says in response, "You overestimate yourself." And he says, "Please, my axe is still slick with the blood of your sisters." And then they go at it and fight. In the Snyder cut, he tells the parademons to get back, she's mine. Wonder Woman responds, "I am nobody's man." And then he just launches at her. Like, come on, you're making him some generic bad guy from what was already a fairly generic bad guy, but at least had some, gall. He had some boastfulness to him. He was a proud warrior. You could have incorporated that, but you had to change the line because it was in the Whedon version. And it's moments like that where it feels less like this is Snyder's actual vision, because I'm 90% sure that line was originally going to be in the Snyder version, but he changed it because it was in the Whedon version. We get that quite a few times. Just some playing around with some of the action sequences type of thing, removing some of the jokier lines, like the moment when Aquaman, says that he's crazy because of his big plan and all that stuff, and Batman's response is, "I'm not the one who brought a pitchfork." That is very much a Snyder line and not a Whedon one. But it's not in this movie. And it really sucks that I can notice that. If you could have done it, seamlessly where I didn't notice it, it wouldn't be a problem. But I can notice it because you did it fairly blatantly with some of the better moments from that version. Rather than, taking a couple of them for yourself to fully improve your movie. The thing I could compare it to pretty easily is Live Free and Die Hard, the fourth Die Hard movie. In the PG-13 cut, when Bruce Willis takes out the helicopter or the car, and everyone's freaking out about it, and asks him about it, he just responds, "I was out of bullets." But in the unrated, rated R version of that, he has some monologue like, "People die in cars every day. That's like, what, 4 more?" You changed it for the sake of changing it, rather than leaving in the obviously better line. But the final problem with this movie is that it is 4 hours. 4 long hours. And you can tell It really doesn't need to be. Zack Snyder is known for overusing slow motion, but there are times in this one where I am just sitting there rolling my eyes. Why are you slow motioning people walking away? There's no reason to slow motion this. It's not like there's a surprise attack coming by and you're trying to emphasize their reaction. They're just walking away to get on a horse so that we can speed things back up to regular speed. Why are we slow-moing here? You combine that with scenes that clearly just drag on way too long and should have been cut up a little bit, and scenes that generally feel like they were just deleted scenes put into the movie for the sake of putting them in there, especially the last 20 minutes, which is just another future sequence thing meant to build to a movie that we may never get. And you have a 4-hour movie that really should be closer to 3.5 hours, maybe even less. And while it is a better experience because it's streaming and you're not stuck in a theater for 4 hours, it is still a long sit. And this should be viewed in multiple sittings. But with all of that said, you must think that I hate this movie. I don't. This movie is really, really good, and I'm really happy for Zack Snyder. I am so glad that he got this movie made, and that the actors got to see this vision, especially Cyborg's actor. I can understand exactly why he was peeved with the Whedon cut. But with all of the problems, the 4-hour runtime, the fan service, everything, I can't say that this is a great movie. And again, Justice League needed to be great to shut down the criticism, didn't it? At least that's what it was for that one. So overall, I feel that we got a better experience, a much more cohesive story, and definitely a better movie. But I am going to just say it right now, I don't think this is going to turn heads. I don't think this is going to make HBO Max the money they think it was going to make them. I don't think they're going to continue any of the plot lines they set up in this movie, especially since some of the movies that they were setting up, like Aquaman, already happened and went in completely different directions anyway. It's a good movie, but overall it feels a little pointless. And I don't want it to be. It's the Justice League. This should be bigger than the Avengers. But it's not. Even at its best, and we got its best with this version, it still just ain't. Maybe in the future it could be, but only if they're actually willing to work at it. If they're just going to reboot it again, I'll talk about that in like 10 years when that builds up to a point where it might be able to rival things. So, we'll see. Overall, though, my rating for the Zack Snyder Justice League is a stream it. Wait for Netflix Redbox. And hey, it's already there. It knew exactly what it was, so it dropped right on the service that it could have. Will I probably buy it if it ever comes out to Blu-ray or DVD? Yeah. I mean, I bought the other one. Why wouldn't I buy this one? Will I go out of my way to watch it very often? I don't know about that one. If it was more in continuity, maybe. But overall, it's just a really good movie. I can say that I enjoyed that 4-hour sit, and it is proof that there was definitely more of an idea than people gave it credit for. I just hope they actually do something with it rather than let it, die. And that's it from me. Have you seen the Zack Snyder Justice League cut? If you have, let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below. Let's get some healthy discussion going. And as always, if you like what you saw, be sure to like, share, subscribe. All that jazz helps my channel grow, so hopefully I can start doing these videos a lot more regularly. Also, I do stream on this channel every single Thursday night. Though the timing does shift a little bit, I usually put it out in advance so you can see when I'm available to stream. Usually the stream starts about 10 or 11 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, mostly because Thursdays are also nights I go and do, movies, so I have to wait until I get back from that to start the stream. And yeah, that's it for me, and this was a long one, and I'll see you guys next time.